to Bookmas. Today we're going to be talking about my top 5 favorite cozy books that I read in 2024. So you know the drill. Grab your cozy blanket, grab a pillow, whatever you need to get comfortable, grab a hot drink, hot coffee, hot tea, hot toddy, whatever floats your boat, and let's get into it. So what makes a book cozy? This is definitely a subjective definition. For me personally, a cozy book is slow, but not boring, just slow in a way that it is paced really peacefully and calmly. It's a book that you can curl up and read without kind of having those super quick rushes of adrenaline or scary moments, or it doesn't like make your heart pound. It's just kind of peaceful and you can sit back and read it and just go at your own pace. I also think that cozy books, the stakes are really low in the plot. It's not really do or die, save the world, good versus evil. It's just kind of like you're dropped in a pre-existing scenario and you're sort of joining in as like a third-party viewer. Cozy books have really beautiful settings. Sometimes they can take place around the holidays. Cozy books have sweet characters that you just want to spend as much time with as possible. And those are kind of the things that I look for. I also think cozy books should be pretty short. I don't think that they should be really, really long, because for it to still be like slow and peaceful and not cross the line into boredom, it does have to be a pretty compact and short book. Once again, don't quote me on that. That's just what I look for in a cozy book, and it's what these top 5 books kind of incorporate. So let's get into it. In my 5th spot for cozy books of 2024, I have My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Friedrich Bachmann. I read this back in January, so almost a year ago. This is one of the books that kind of kicked off my 2024 reading year, and I really, really loved it. If you are at all interested in reading this book, I would say start now, because actually there's a lot of Christmas vibes in the beginning of it, so it's such a great book to read in December specifically. But this follows our main character, Elsa, who is a 7-year-old little girl. She's very, very intelligent, very smart, very witty, and she's really, really close with her grandmother. Her grandmother is kind of this crotchety, old, super quirky, elderly woman. They all live in a building together. Elsa, her mother, her family, her grandmother, and then all these other buildings' tenants. And the other tenants in the building don't like Elsa's grandmother. She kind of terrorizes them, but in a way that's sort of like cute and harmless. She just plays a lot of pranks. She yells at them. She's just like your typical classic old woman that's really cranky, but she loves her family and is actually pretty sweet on the inside. All that to say, Elsa's grandmother dies immediately. She dies right in the beginning of the book, so it's not a spoiler. Don't come at me for that. But the whole plot of this book is Elsa delivering letters from her grandmother to the other building tenants that are apology letters for being a crotchety, cranky old woman and playing pranks on everybody. So the whole book is Elsa going around to all of these different people that live in the apartment building, handing out these letters. But Elsa, like I said, is really, really smart, and she's very interested in people, and she wants to know their stories. She wants to know who they are. She really wants to know, why is my grandmother apologizing to you right now? So the whole book feels like Elsa going through life and gathering as many stories as possible. And that was a really unique way to tell a story, I think, through other stories, if that makes sense, because we are going with Elsa on this journey. I want to know why her grandmother is apologizing to all these people, but we're also learning about everybody else that lives in the apartment. And it was really interesting. It was really well done. It was sad. This book really got you in the emotions. There is a part near the end where I almost made it through the entire thing without crying, but there's a part at the end. I was sitting next to my husband while I was reading it. I was so cocky going into this book, like, I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. That's crazy. I was so cocky. And then I was reading it. I got to a certain point and just huge fat alligator tears rolling down my cheeks, just sniffing, crying. It was rough, but rough in a way that felt really satisfying and deserving. It definitely deserves all of the emotions that it pulls out of you, and it is a very slow book. The story takes its time, the pacing takes its time. You really get to spend a lot of time with these characters and you learn about them, you see them grow. Elsa is 7, and it's all through her perspective, but you know she's a very intelligent 7-year-old. I just think it was done super, super well. And like I said, every emotion that it gets out of you feels very, very deserving. I think the only negative thing that I have to say about this book is there is one part that kind of breaks out of the cozy mold for a second. The book itself really lives in that cozy vein where it's just peaceful and calm. And yes, it is sad, but it's just such a great reading experience. But there is one little moment where it just crosses the line into some drama, into some a bit higher stakes. It's very short, it's very quick, and then we go back into the cozy box that we were living in for so long. That's the only negative thing that I would say about it. But overall, such a great reading experience. I thought it was such a beautiful story, and the way that it was told was really unique and well done. So highly recommend this one, especially to read right now during December, during the holidays, because I think that that will just add to the entire experience. In fourth place in my top 5 favorite cozy reads of 2024 is Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. I've heard a lot of things about Ann Patchett as an author, but I had never read anything of hers until I picked up this book on the recommendation of one of my friends, and the fact that it was $5 off at Barnes & Noble. So this follows our main character, Lara, and it takes place in multiple different timelines. Present tense, we are 2020 in northern Michigan. It actually takes place during the pandemic, which was super interesting. Lara's family all lives on a cherry farm in northern Michigan. All of her daughters, she has 3 daughters, and they were all scattered across the country doing their jobs, doing what they do, but because of the pandemic, they all moved back to Michigan to isolate with family and live on the farm. While they are all together, the daughters are asking the mom, Lara, to tell them stories about when she was younger. When Lara was younger, she was an actress, a stage actress, and she has a lot of fun, interesting, unique stories that the daughters want to learn more about. So the way that this book reads is really unique, and it took me a while to wrap my brain around it, but it feels like Lara is actually telling the reader, us, a story about how she told her daughters a story about when she was younger. It's story inception, but it was done in a way that I think didn't take away from the storytelling. Like, it wasn't distracting. It actually kind of added to the writing style that I really, really liked it, and I enjoyed it. And it's just a cozy read. You're just listening to this mom tell a story to her girls, but then we're also getting the perspective of younger Lara while she's in this theater group called Tom Lake in Michigan, and they're doing a production of a real play called Our Town, and you learn all about Lara's past, her relationships, how she meets her husbands, her daughters coming into the world. You kind of just get the story of her life, and it's not even the greatest story ever told. Like, Lara kind of goes through normal things, but they're not the most crazy and intense, hard-hitting things. It's just kind of like somebody's life, and everybody's life is unique and different, and they have a story to be told. I think that added to the coziness level for me because it was just simple. It was simple and it was sweet. There were a lot of family dynamics that I loved about it, family relationship stuff that they talk about, that they go through while dealing with what's happening in 2020 and the difficulties that come with that, careers, jobs, while still having a little bit of an artistic vibe with the theater aspect of it. It was very summery. I think that this is a good book to read in the summer if you're looking for something that's kind of short and sweet, but not like a summer romance, not like a beach read summer romance book. My one gripe with this one, and I mentioned this when I talked about this book in a reading wrap-up that I did a couple months ago, my one gripe is that I feel like literary fiction books like this fall into the trap of tragedy in order to be taken seriously, and this book got so close to just being sweet. Yes, there were some sad parts in it, yes, there were some serious parts in it, but for the most part, it was just a sweet story. And I literally remember thinking while I was reading it and while I was getting towards the end, I think this book is going to do it. Like, this book is going to do it. This isn't going to fall into that trap of having to be tragic in order to be taken seriously. And right at the 11th hour, right before the book ends, there is enough of it that I got kind of annoyed that they had to throw in a little bit of that tragedy, a little bit of that sadness. It just feels like some authors think that their books literally won't be taken seriously, or it won't get the recognition that it deserves unless there's tragedy in it. And this is totally a personal preference, but I just don't always love that. It was very quick, and it really wasn't as bad as it could have been. So I still love this book. I still love the vibes of it. Is absolutely on the cozy reading list for a reason. But if I had to pick one negative thing to say about it, it would probably be that. But overall, highly, highly recommend this book. I think just the way that it is written, I've never read a book like that, where it felt like I said, that story Inception. I don't know if I described that accurately, but it's kind of how I felt. It's the only way that I can think to describe it. I've never read a book like that before. The vibes were great, and it is a really great summary read, but I think that you could read it in the winter as well and still kind of get that feeling of coziness. You're curled up by the fire, almost like you're listening to a family member tell stories about their past. It was really, really sweet. So I absolutely love this book. Highly recommend. In our number 3 spot for top cozy books of 2024, we have The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. There are a surprising amount of people that were in my comments recently saying how much they didn't like this book, and definitely to each their own, but it's really difficult for me to imagine somebody feeling such negative emotions about this book, because it's one of those books that's just, it's an easy read, it's simple, it's sweet, it's got something for everybody. There's really not a lot to dislike, I think. This follows our main character Nora, who when we meet her is super depressed. She hates her life with a passion and decides to end it. Literally, the first sentence of this book tells you that she kills herself, which is such a strange way to start a book and to meet a character, but that is exactly what happens. And very quickly we are introduced to the Midnight Library, which is kind of a world between worlds, and Nora is basically given a chance to live out all of her what ifs. Those questions in your life that you ask yourself, what if I had gone through this path? What if I had made this choice? What little thing could I have done differently? And how would my life be different if I had accomplished that? Especially for somebody like Nora, who hated her previous life on Earth, she now gets a chance to try out every other option for her life. It's almost like a multiverse type thing. And then if she finds a life that she is truly, really satisfied with, she will be able to have a second chance and live in that life. So Nora goes on a full-on adventure from the Midnight Library. The way that it works is you choose a book, and then that book is like another version of your life, which I really liked. So she's choosing books left, right, and center. She's a pop star in one of the iterations. She goes to Antarctica to study polar bears in one of the iterations. Some of them are really, really similar to her old life, just slightly different, and others are completely different to her old life, and she gets to try them all on. And as soon as she starts by fire. You get what you get with that thing. As soon as she starts feeling any bit of dissatisfaction in the life that she's trying on, she is instantly transported back into the Midnight Library to try something else. So by the end of this, Nora is getting really, really frustrated because she doesn't really have control in the moment over dissatisfaction. She's not actively choosing, okay, I actually don't like this life, I'm gonna go choose a different one. She's trying to fit into each life that she tries on, but naturally, us as humans, we feel dissatisfaction, we feel a negative emotion, and we can't really control it. And so as soon as Nora starts to feel that, she has no other choice. She's transported back to the Midnight Library. So it's really a book about facing your regrets, facing your what ifs, learning to be satisfied in a life that you have, and finding beauty in all of the small things. Nora, through this experience, is able to learn to appreciate life's little moments, appreciate the people that she's met who's in her life now that maybe she wouldn't even look twice at beforehand. And I think that it's just told really beautifully. It's like a kind of intense topic, and especially the way that the book starts with Nora wanting to end her life. It sounds really, really intense, but it actually wasn't. It was surprisingly a really lighthearted read. It was easy, the stakes were low, it was funny at times, and the whole time you were so connected to this character of Nora. You want her to find a life that she is satisfied with so badly. I am rooting for this main character to find her happy ending, and I think that that is the sign of like a really good book. But this one in particular is very wrapped up in coziness. It's sweet, it's simple, but I think that it's also really effective at the same time. So I personally really liked The Midnight Library. I know that there are people that are out there that don't like it. I think it just comes down to a personal preference at that point of what types of books you like to read, and this one for me was really, really great. So I would recommend this one if you're looking for a cozy read. All right, our runner-up for Cozy Books of 2024 is going to be Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This was the very first book that I read in 2024. This is number 1, and it was a 5-star book for me. We really started out strong, and then the rest of that month kind of took a downward spiral, but this is okay. This is still one of my favorite books that I've read this year. Definitely one of my favorite cozy books that I've read this year. So it follows 3 different characters, Tova, Cameron, and Marcellus. Tova is an elderly woman who's kind of fighting against retirement and fighting against going to a nursing home, basically. She wants her independence. She wants to feel like she's young still. And so she continues to work at an aquarium in the town that she lives in just to have something to do. Her husband died a couple years ago. She doesn't have any other living family. And so she's just trying to maintain autonomy and independence as somebody that is in their late 70s. Our second character is Cameron, who is supposed to be this really smart, intelligent guy that basically lacks all ambition in life. And to be fair, he was dealt a pretty crappy hand of cards, but also he just kind of sucks. He's pretty selfish. He's not a great friend. He's looking for his biological father, who he doesn't know who that is. He just is kind of using people, but at his core, you know that he's a good guy. You know that he is really trying to make something of his life. He's not evil. He's not doing anything out of bad intentions, but he is making poor choices. And so he finds himself in the same town that Tova lives in, and their paths kind of cross, and he also starts working at the aquarium for one reason or another, and they kind of become friends. Our third character, Marcellus, is this octopus right here. He is not really our narrator, but he does have chapter injections where it's the only first-person perspective that we get in the book. All the other chapters and perspectives are third-person between Tova and Cameron. Marcellus is first-person, though. He has a lot of main character energy that I love. I was laughing out loud during his interludes because he is an octopus that actually lives in the aquarium that Tova and Cameron are working at. And so he watches them, he observes them, he listens to their conversations, and he can understand it. He's a thief. He'll sneak out of the aquarium at night and steal a bunch of trinkets and then go hide them in his tank. It's very cute. I love him so much. I had so much fun reading his little interjections and his first-person perspective. He's funny. He made me laugh out loud multiple times. But the way that the author interweaves these 3 characters' stories, they all start out very separate in the beginning of the book, but as the book starts to unfold and kind of get to our conclusion, you see that their plots are actually really interwoven, and the way that the author did that, I think, was just so well done. It was so well done, and it was really cozy. Again, the stakes are low, it's peaceful, it's calming, but you feel very connected to the characters, and you want to see them get to the place in life that they need to be at. They all have these goals, and you just want to see them achieve it, and I loved it. And reading a perspective from an octopus was not something that was on my 2024 bingo card, but it really started the year off strong, so highly recommend this one. Finally, the coziest book that I read in 2024, not even my favorite cozy book of 2024. In full transparency, I actually liked this book more than any other book on this list, but if I'm ranking the books on how cozy they were, this book really takes the case, and that is, of course, Welcome to the Hyunam-dong Bookshop. This is a book that I read also in November. I actually read it because a commenter said that I should, especially if I liked books about books, which we know that I do. This is a Korean translated book, which I had never read a translated book before, but this was just so beautiful. This was so beautiful. Honestly, this is the epitome of a cozy book because in a lot of ways, there's not a lot of plot going on. There's not really a storyline that we are following. There's not a problem that's presented at the beginning of the book that needs to be solved at the end of it. We're just kind of dropped down into this setting in Korea, into this bookshop, and then we just meet the characters that are around. We meet the customers, we meet the barista, we meet the bookshop owner, all of their friends, and this book just feels like a bunch of character vignettes that you observe, that you learn about, that you listen to, and you're just kind of immersed in a world as if you were living in it yourself. And again, there's not like a lot of story to it, but it's just really, really beautifully written and cozy. That's the only word that I can think of to describe it. All of these characters kind of have something in common, which is that they all are really struggling with that work-life balance. A lot of them come from company jobs or really high up kind of intense intense jobs that maybe they pay a lot or it's what their parents want from them, but it's literally sucking their souls out and they're not enjoying it at all. And so they quit that job and are trying to find joy more in the mundane. And what does that look like for everybody? And it's asking the question of each of these characters, do you find joy and fulfillment by completing something in life, or can you find joy and fulfillment in the journey that it takes to complete something? And there's not really a wrong or a right answer here. It's just sort of presenting the question to the reader and to these characters, asking what they think, and all of them are responding to it really differently. It also deals with some interesting cultural themes along the lines of divorce, because that's in this setting sort of looked down upon for relationships. You don't get divorced, you just don't. And how does that affect the characters' relationships with their friends and with their family members and their parents? It's very, very interesting. It's like dealing with kind of difficult topics, but again in a way where it just feels peaceful and the stakes are low, and I just had such a great time reading it. I said in my reading wrap up that I gave this a 5-star, not even because it's objectively the best book ever, but every time that I would sit down to read it, my personal experience with the book was just so positive, and it was so relaxing and peaceful and sweet, and that is why I loved it so much, and that is why it is in the #1 spot for the top cozy book of the year. And there you go. Here are my top 5 favorite cozy books from 2024. I specifically wanted to talk about this category because in December, around Christmas and around the holidays, all I want to read are cozy books. I want to curl up by the fire that only sometimes works. I want to sit by the Christmas tree. I want to drink a hot drink, and I want to relax, and I want to read something that is not going to be super emotionally disruptive for me, but just something that's relaxing and peaceful and nice and sweet. And that is all of these books in my opinion. So if you are like me and are looking for similar books to read around this time, any of these would be a fantastic option for you. So let me know if you've read any of them already and what you think of them. Also, what your favorite cozy book recommendations are, because I am literally always looking for them. I love cozy books. So please let me know some in the comments and what you think. And as always, thank you so much for joining, watching, and hanging out with me here. And we'll see you next time for more